Hello, everybody, and happy Sunday. I wanted to wear my freedom, thanks to Jonathan Emord. And hang on one second, because just a little maintenance doesn't like to make on my page public. So, welcome. If you are on Facebook, whether it's on my public page or on the Parent Team 6 page, and you want to comment, there's up in the top a little StreamYard thing if you would like to have your name. If you don't, that's fine. It'll just say Facebook user. And if you would like to jump on with me, please be sure to comment with your name and I will send you an invite. But again, we've been going through legislation, and there's two bills, well, actually many bills, that are extremely problematic. But one in particular is a Republican bill, thanks to Todd Pilon, criminalizing parents. Yes, that it's not Elizabeth Guzman, Crazy Pants Guzman this time. It is Todd Pilon. And I'm going to pull that up. Right. New. Yes, here we go. Add that. So this would be SB 619. And that's right. That would be Todd Pilon. I had to double check this. I don't know SD's District 6 is. I know where 7 is. I know I used to be 7. I'm 1 now. That would be a Republican. Now my guess is with the push for, because you know that accreditation is like, someone said, criminalizing for what? Well, let me get there. So you know that accreditation is like solely based on attendance now, if you haven't been following everything. So that's what this push for, attendance, like making kids go to school, which of course they're 100% blaming on parents. And we're going to go through why that's an absolute hypocrisy. So Todd Pilon, and again, I'm going to show you how to read legislation. So this is SB 619. And so when you, money is reward for accreditation. Yeah. And that's what, accreditation, I actually have a t-shirt that says education, or education, not accreditation, or accreditation over education, is that accreditation means nothing. It's like a moving needle. It's like, it used to mean, okay, you could go after their accreditation and the charter for your county if they had a geometry teacher who wasn't licensed in geometry teaching geometry, or if there was no special education teacher, you could go after their accreditation. Okay, accreditation is nothing now. Like Chesterfield County, we have like 69 schools and we have like 36 in the red, but we're still considered 100% accredited. Okay, so I mean, it's like, it means nothing. So this bill here, so to read legislation, you're going to go to how it was originally printed, because according to the LIS system, it has not been changed yet. So, and then you hit highlight. And so this is a bill to amend and reenact relating, it's a compulsory education. Again, Patron Pilon referred to Committee on Education and Health. And if you want to see which education and health, because there's a couple, public education. So it's been assigned on 130. It has not, as far as my understanding is what I'm following, it has not been heard. So we want to stay on top of this one. Thank you, Todd Pilon. And if you're in SD6 or anywhere, start writing him, start writing your representatives. Because any Republican criminalizing parents for anything, get on top of it. But this actually targets historically marginalized, impoverished. So they're criminalizing, and that means you're going to be brought into the CPS system. So CPS has long ago criminalized poverty. And now they're going to criminalize attendance. Which I can't even tell you how many special education parents I have sat through Board of Education and Chesterfield County meetings who have, so you go, sorry, real quick, and you go to highlight if you want to see what's been redlined or changed. But their children are in 7th grade reading at a 3rd grade level because the county has failed them and not cared if they can read or not. So parents, instead of having suicidal children in a 7th grade classroom, have kept their children home to protect the safety of their children. And what does the county who've refused to educate their children do? Haul them into court for truancy. Yes, that's our reality. So here it adds to, now the term neglect, and I was having a conversation with various CPS and child sex trafficking advocates I work with, is problematic to begin with because it leaves parents wide open for, I don't know, misgendering their children. But on this end, you can be found, it's called education neglect, whose parents or other person responsible for his care commits educational neglect as defined in, and then you can click on this. And it's not even defined, like they just put, so an attendance officer, if pupil is absent for more than one additional day after direct contact with the pupil's parent, and school personnel have received no indication that the pupil's parent is aware of and supports the pupil's absence, the school principal or his designee shall schedule a conference with the pupil and the school personnel. So that's what they're referencing. So you could be guilty of education neglect, and we're going to get to, and then you scroll down to child in need of supervision, a child who, while subject to compulsory school attendance, guys, by the way, compulsory attendance, like legally required compulsory education, is not normal across the world. Okay, so because we're used to the law requiring us to send our children to school, that's part of the problem, is habitually, now they crossed out and without justification, which is important. So a child who, while subject to compulsory school attendance, which is every child, is habitually, now they crossed out and without justification, which is important, is habitually absent from school as defined in. So they removed without justification. So your child can habitually be absent because of cancer, 25 things, I don't know. My daughter has rheumatoid arthritis, like they removed the justification portion of it. And the child has been offered an adequate opportunity to receive the benefit of any and all educational services that are required to be provided by law, which meet the child's particular educational needs. So, and then you go down to, and again, I can't walk you through all of it, but then we go to this nice big yellow portion. And unfortunately, I cannot zoom in, I don't think, because it's a website. If I had downloaded it. So, as used in this section, unless the context requires a different meaning. Like, what is that context, Todd? Chronically absent means any student who is subject to compulsory education requirements pursuant to 2.1-254, who has missed 10% or more of the academic year for any reason, including excused absences and unexcused. Facebook user said, remember, one of the 10 commandments is to honor parent. The state is saying that parents don't matter and they will do what we say. The state says, correct. And that is the problem with a welfare state, is that you will do what the state says. And that is not how a constitutional republic with a democratic representative form of government works. You cannot find parents guilty of educational neglect for any reason, including excused absences or unexcused absences. That's chronically absent. Education neglect means failure or refusal to provide necessary education for a child subject to compulsory ed. It's every child, by the way. Let's just clarify right here that they are just making people question, is my child subject to compulsory ed? Yes. We're one of the freest nation in the world past compulsory education, and we still sit here 100 years later thinking it's normal. It's not normal for the freest nation in the world to legally require parents to send their children to school, government schooling. Okay. So compulsory attendance pursuant to who has enrolled in a public school and who has missed 10% or more of the academic year, including failure or refusal to. Let's scroll over a little bit. Comply with compulsory attendance requirements by causing or allowing the child to become chronically absent. Okay. Someone said, just jump on and already laughing on this law. Correct. But in case since you're just jumping on, this is a Republican. This is not crazy pants Elizabeth Guzman criminalizing parents. This is Todd Pillion, since you're just jumping on. That's the zinger here. Enroll a child in any public school, otherwise meet the compulsory requirements, including any failure to comply with the requirements. If such failure or refusal to enroll such child continues after the school notifies and institutes proceeding against the parent and the time elapsed between. So educational neglect does not include any situation in which a child who becomes chronically absent is also a student with disabilities or has a 504 plan in place in relation to documented medical needs. Now notice, they put chronically absent is also a student with disabilities and they specifically named a Section 504 plan. They did not specifically name an individual education plan, an IEP, which is what students with disabilities have. And that is the problem. If you remember the video of Jillian Balow that I've showed 100 times, stating that all children will have individual education plans, and that goes back to IDEA, Medicaid, all children being at risk. We've talked about that before. So they can't specifically name like 504 an individual education plan because individual education plans no longer apply to just, yes, honey. I know, thank you. She's good child. So if you don't have a 504 or a student with disabilities, not mentioning an IEP, so if your child has cancer or any other thing and you don't have, and they're not disabled or they don't have a 504, what happens then? What happens if they have Lyme disease or something like that? Because I forget what it's called, mono in like 4th grade, and I was out for like a month. They just sent my work home and I did it then. Am I habitually absent? Are my parents going to be, would they have been found guilty of educational neglect because I had mono? Or do you want to send me to school with mono? And habitually absent means any student who is subject to compulsory education, which is all children, who has missed more than one additional school day after the school made efforts to make direct contact. So I don't know if you've ever had a child who was sick and forgotten until the middle of the day to call and tell the school. So your child is now habitually absent. If you one day after, okay, I know mom's so short. More than one additional day after the school made efforts to make direct contact, your child is now habitually absent. After such student's fifth unexcused absence and either such efforts to make direct contact and resolve student's non-attendance failed, or circumstances exist in which the parent is intentionally non-compliant with compulsory attendance requirements. And then it goes into every school board shall have the power to appoint one or more attendance officers. And then it skips down to whenever the pupil fails to report to school for a total of 5 scheduled school days for the school year, and no indication has been received by school personnel that the pupil's parents are aware of and support the pupil's absence, and a reasonable effort to notify the parent has failed, the school principal or his designee shall make the reasonable effort to ensure that this is all already written there. Through telephone conversation or through the use of other communication devices to obtain an explanation for the pupil's absence and to explain to the parent the consequences of continued non-absence. Now they added, including the point at which continued non-attendance amounts to be chronically absent, a form of educational neglect. Chronically absent meaning any student who is subject to compulsory education who has missed 10% or more of the academic year for any reason, including excused absences. Okay. In the event, this is new, in the event that the school has followed the procedures in this section and such non-attendance continues until such student becomes chronically absent, such continued non-attendance shall constitute educational neglect, and the school shall report such neglect to the appropriate authorities. I don't even want to click on these. Let's see. Notice of duty to report child abuse or neglect. That would be mandatory reporters, mandated reporters. Private or parochial school. So now we've brought this, they say it's public, but they've cited private and parochial. And then also they've listed a requirement that certain injuries be reported by physicians, nurses, teachers. But they do include penalty for failure to report, which Charlottesville and that, teacher raped student thing that they're so confused about. Yeah, penalty for failure to report, sorry. And then down here it says, so this is regarding the attendance officer. When no valid reason is found thereof to notify the parent to require the attendance of such child at the school within 3 days from the date of such notice. And this is new. And inform the parent of the consequences and continued non-compliance, including that failure to enroll such child for more than one additional day after the 3rd day following the receipt of notice shall result in the institution of court proceedings against such parent that continued to failure to enroll such child for a period of time amounting to 10% of the academic year after the institution of court proceedings shall constitute educational neglect. So I'm going to post LIS for some, they really don't want you sharing legislation. I'm going to try and copy and post it anyway. But so there's a lot of problems with this bill. Is one is that it's a Republican criminalizing parents. And two, I'm going to go to this article right here that just came up January 21st. Schools facing pressure to take harder line on discipline after Virginia teacher is shot. This brings up, as kids' behavior reaches crisis points after the stress and isolation of pandemic shutdowns. Shut your mouth. Okay. The kids were, this whole, I'm going to show you restorative justice. So they're passing a law on restorative justice. Okay. I'm going to show you how long they've been doing restorative justice. Just like last year, trauma-informed care, they passed a law to do trauma-informed care. You know how long they've been doing trauma-informed care is that we have problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution. Is that these kids are not going to school because of things they're now finally introducing into law. Okay. How do parents force their children to go to school, much less stay in the building, when schools do not enforce discipline because discipline is racist and is called a school to prison pipeline? That's like the piece that we're missing here, is that if you can discipline your child at home all you want, but they know that when they go to school, they don't have discipline and they're not held accountable, why would a child continue? And then you're going to blame the parents who may or may not be disciplining their children at home. And then you have children coming home, hating their parents and fighting back to what the parents instill at home. But when they go to school 8 hours a day, parents have no idea the reason their children come home acting like they do is because of what is being taught in school. So approaches such as restorative justice were adopted widely in recent decades as educators updated exclusionary policies that cut off students' access to learning and disproportionately affected students of color. So now we're back to the color thing. But more students have been acting out after what? Decades of restorative justice? So they're still so let's write it into law. They're still acting out after decades of restorative justice. So let's put it into law after it's failed. Because, hey, let's do it the dumbest way possible is how Virginia operates. Some school systems have faced questions from teachers, parents, and lawmakers about whether a gentle approach can effectively address problems that disrupt classrooms. Regarding, this is about a child of 6 years old shooting a teacher. Do you think a gentle approach, and not to mention restorative justice, were adopted widely in recent decades, and now you're going to gently bring it back? But again, it's not new. And so the latest example came this week in Newport News, where teachers complained at the school system where a 6-year-old teacher or a 6-year-old shot a teacher became too lenient with students. Correct. And that's called, you said it was school to prison pipeline. And it's not too lenient. They literally have gotten rid of discipline. And I'm sure that any of you watching know this. What is the ramification if there's no discipline in the home? Crazy children who don't listen to parents, who then go on in life and don't listen to authority, and then go on to what? When they're no longer in the home, they go on, they don't listen to authority, known as police and judges, and then they go to jail. That is the school to prison pipeline. Okay. Suspending children, expelling children is called consequences. And when children are taught consequences from an early age, they no longer have that disrespect to authority. And then they graduate and there is no school to prison pipeline. Get it? I don't know when anybody's going to get it. So just like Royal Gurley in Charlottesville, and their creative response is that no. No, is that these children need discipline. These children need to go to school and be afraid that not only, but is that if they get sent to the principal's office and get suspended, that there needs to be the fear at school and then the fear at home. If it doesn't work together, if there's fear at home but not fear at school, then it doesn't, the circle of discipline and creating responsible children doesn't finish. So, but just to show you guys real quick, bringing up Biden and the problem with Biden in all of this. And I know that there's a bill in the till Go figure. But so community schools has been there's a bill in is that we've had community schools for 30 years thanks to the collaboration of Warner and Allen. RD. R good, D bad. Nope. Community schools. Okay. So now we've got Biden Harris announcing more of our money because we're paying for this to expand full service community schools. Okay. But to show you, let me find it. This is just, Harrisonburg City, just restorative justice and education. So here's Harrisonburg, just to show you how long, there are other school divisions. Principles and values of restorative justice and education. Okay, so it's not just restorative practices, it's restorative justice. Building healthy relationships. We all function better when our core needs are honored and met. Conflict is a learning opportunity, not something to be avoided. We are accountable to one another. So it sounds all like warm and fuzzy. Okay. Within a community, it is important to build norms and values. Okay. Whose norms and whose values? Because I don't think the public schools are teaching anybody's values that we want. Relationships. Okay. We can go back to SEL. What is a relationship? Respect. Respect of whom? Okay. Are we talking about respect as in allyship? And if your child's not comfortable with role play with same sex in 7th grade, is that respect? Response, repair, reintegration. Those are the 5 R's, by the way. So our mindset is the lens from the stand of who we are as a person and who we are as a community. This goes back to socialism, and socialism views us as a part of a community, not an individual. So that it would be collectivism. History matters, race matters, justice matters, language matters. This is Harrisonburg. Okay, this is not Fairfax. This is not Loudoun. Are schools using this now? Yes, restorative justice and education falls into our wellness goal of our strategic plan. Wellness, okay? However, not every teacher has a foundation of prior training in restorative justice education. So they now provide professional development opportunities. Let's see. And just to show you, so this would be the Virginia Counselors Association. Restorative Justice Workshop, Saturday, April 2nd, 2011. 13 years ago. Restorative Justice Workshop for the Virginia Counselors Association. What is it? It is a conflict management process that is used to deal with incidences that cause harm. So in short, what restorative justice does, restorative practices, we'll call them, restorative circles you may have heard of. I actually had the pleasure of watching or being a part of a town hall down at Bailey Bridge Middle School. No, not Bailey Bridge. Yeah. Bailey Bridge Middle School. No, Manchester Middle School last year. And the arrogant principal made the mistake of being in the room with me. And we were talking about counselors and about how counselors don't have time to do teacher, their school counsel, their guidance counselor jobs anymore, because the majority of their time was spent doing restorative practices and restorative circles. And I turned around like this. And Catherine Haynes, our far liberal Tim Kaine bestie, looked at me and was like, oh God, you just said that in front of the wrong mother. And I said, can you repeat that? So your counselors can't do their job because they're too busy doing restorative practices. So just so, when you get involved, things that you need to start paying attention to. So let's see, where did Harrisonburg? Trying to find. Yeah, here's a good one. So DOJ, this would be 2014. The Department of Justice promised a whopping $63 million to investigate school safety programs and to reward districts for implementing restorative justice. 2014. Restorative justice. The funding is awarded as a part of a comprehensive school safety initiative. That's another one that you should put on your zinger for 2014. Oh, increasing safety through restorative justice, making schools safer for girls and LGBTQ students of color in Chicago's public schools. There you go. They tell you exactly what it's about. The Radical Ed organization, Rethinking Schools, says restorative justice in schools is a victory for activist educators like Bill Ayers. I don't know if you know who Bill Ayers is, but you should. And his wife, Bernardine Dorn, who have been fighting the school to prison pipeline that they believe exists because of unfair suspension and expulsions of student color. And so, and Obama administration agrees. Resource for guide for improving school climate is that you have to understand how these two things go together. So now we're criminalizing parents for their children not going to school. What's this I missed from the start? What you missed was the Todd Pillion bill, SB 619, that criminalizes parents. That's a Republican, by the way. Criminalizes parents for education neglect. And we went through all of it. You can watch from the beginning about like what chronically absent meant. And then we jumped into criminalizing parents for their children not going to school when the reasons there's like two handfuls in my brain of reasons children are not going to school or are chronically absent or that parents don't even know about involving the schools. So you're criminalizing parents because they're been eliminated from the picture. They have no idea what's going on in schools. And then you want to charge them when they take their kid to school, do everything they can to make sure their kid stays in school, but practices like restorative justice, that there's now legislation in the till when they've been doing it. Let's see, since 2011, I think I showed. Yeah, here the DOJ gave in 2014 $63 million for social justice. So let's just be clear what restorative justice is. It's social justice. And then I think I might have closed it out. But and then I'm not going to show all this, but Rand, believe it or not, who's part of the, oh my God, get them out of schools. They produced in 2018, a big paper, which anybody who wants it, just send me. But I read the whole thing and I've highlighted it. But they, in this whole paper, using their evidence, said that it didn't work. And not only that, it disrupted schools so much that it made children not want to go to school. So there's the problem. You go again. There's things that we're now putting into law that we've already been doing. So attacking homeschooling. Well, here's an interesting thing about that question is that if you go into about homeschooling, it says public, but it does mention private and parochial about reporting abuse. So I know that Virginia's homeschooling laws are not broad. They still have to report to that their children are being educated. So while you don't have attendance this could have implications for like, that's the problem with adding laws like this, is that you're creating a problem by creating laws that you may think are well intended, but what the future of this law could bring in criminalizing parents at all is far reaching. But I went ahead and pulled up the data set, for those who, because of this, and so chronically absent students, I pulled up, this is from the Virginia Department of Education, is, so out of all students across, this is the entire state, Black students are 22.5. This is why it's not a color thing. It's not a racially, it's not a, is so you have a Republican criminalizing chronically absent. And this is why it can't just be me in the Senate when this comes up telling these people how absolutely ludicrous they are. Is that, and this isn't going to solve the problem either. I'm going to tell people criminalizing parents isn't going to solve the problem, because parents have no idea what's going on in schools that's making their children not go to school. And that's how we have to go to the root issues. So that would be, so you're going to criminalize 22.5% of Black parents, 24.5% of Hispanic parents, 18.9% of Native Hawaiian parents, 16.5% of, now these are percentages based off of the whole. So this would be the parents of 90,000 white children, 56,000 Hispanic children, 58,000. And then you've got 15,000. And then you've got students, well, they're not going to say disabilities, economically disadvantaged, 150,000 children. That's 150,000 sets of parents who are going to be what? Criminally accountable for education neglect. The newest data set. This is from the Department of Education. I mean, we could, I think I can even break it down. You could, yeah, it breaks it down into school division and all that kind of stuff. But those are the numbers that we're talking about using their language, which, by the way, up here, chronically absent means any student. So when they say any, it literally means any. That's like all means all. Because who is subject to compulsory education? Private, homeschool, and public. Any student, so that is all children. Okay, so they might mention public, but when they say any student who is subject to compulsory education, that is all children, whether you homeschool or not, who has missed 10% or more of the academic year for any reason, including excused absences. Now, at homeschool, they may not be able to calculate it the same, but I promise you with that any student who's subject to compulsory education, there is a way that they will find to come after homeschool parents and private school parents, okay? I don't care if you contact every Democrat and that you know or don't know, is that this bill must be defeated. And at the same time, the restorative justice must be defeated. Because one, here you go. It doesn't work. I'll send you this study if you want. But not to mention is that restorative justice is mentioned in the Educating the Whole Child, Improving School Climate to Support Student Success, 2018. Okay. So this would be the VAASP, Virginia Association of, what's ASP? School Principals? It's one of the associations. I want to say it's not elementary school, secondary school principals. It's one of them. State superintendents, maybe. Schools, I'll figure it out. 2014 Board of Education model student. Okay, now remember, when did 2014? 63 million went to what? Restorative justice. Okay. And then we go to 2014. Voila. This goes to comprehensive plan priorities. Why revise? Reduce exclusionary approaches to discipline. Why revise? Oh, and they talk about the VTSS. We've talked about that. That's like the MTSS, the umbrella that has SEL, PBIS, restorative justice, response to intervention. And anybody that wants this. Oh, and then they had the 2019 model guidance. Connect student behavior to safe, supportive school climate and to student achievement by the profile of a graduate. So remember, guys, this is pre-COVID. Describes student behavior without criminalizing it. Equitable approaches to school discipline. Separate school discipline from crime. Restorative and age-appropriate responses. Okay, guys. Oh, and there's our favorite little, equity picture. So this, has been, and then again, this is SEL right here, social emotional learning. This was before we even had a law or anybody thought it was going on. So no, this is not about COVID yet again. Okay, so go to sample administrative support actions, behavior supports right here. Restorative practices, worksheets for your use. There's this castle wheel. And again, this was before the law. And this is before we even knew we had it because we had James Lane. Guidelines for alternatives to suspension. Negative effects of suspension. Places students at risk for dropping out. So why are we still here now criminalizing parents for students not going to school? Thank you, Todd Pillion. If it way back when they said that suspension placed students at risk for dropping out. Okay, if they're not going now, 5 or 6 years later, then your negative effects for suspension doesn't need to be layered with restorative justice. That's already in place. If you were to search your division with restorative practices, you'll find it. Are being applied disproportionately to students with disabilities and African Americans. Okay, so we go back to our data set and we look at all children. So 22.5% of the chronically absent 5 years, 6 years after this report was done. So explain to me why we're still having the problem if your approaches worked in the first place, because I'm confused. So we have negative effects of suspension. Decrease in academic engagement. That would be not going to school, right? So we're going to criminalize parents for their children not going to school when you stop suspending them because it was a negative effect. But if we go to our recent data sets, they're not going to school and it's even gotten worse. So explain to me, decrease in academic achievement. Okay. For some, create a pathway to prison rather than college or career. So suspension a couple years ago was supposed to create a pathway to prison. But now we're criminalizing parents whose kids still aren't going to school when you dropped the whole suspension punishment thing to begin with, and not to mention what they're creating a law for now, again, has been in play for years now. You just may not know it. So I already showed you Harrisonburg. Let's look at Fairfax, since Fairfax is like the trigger point for everybody. Restorative justice in Fairfax County Public Schools. And this can be found, you can Google this. Okay. Myths of restorative justice practice. Takes too much time. Okay, it does take too much time because they're doing restorative circles. They're sitting in circles. It is a substitute for existing system of justice and discipline. That's an outright lie because we go back to here and here they said that they're no longer going to do suspension or discipline. So it's not an add-on. You just have to, this is total, only for minor wrongdoing and first-time offenders can be used for any situation. Restorative justice is a philosophy. So just what we need, more philosophy, which means it's unsounded. It has no proof of that it ever worked, based on a principle. I don't know if you saw my SEL is CRT with a hug, but this is the problem, is that they take philosophy and frameworks and principles, and it's none of them have actual definitions, and then they throw them at our kids, which means they're experimental. And then when it doesn't work out, they're like, let's just do some more of it. Problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, problem, problem. Okay. And our kids are suffering because of people having no clue what's going on. So this has been going on forever, just like social emotional learning, just like PBIS, all of the things that they're finally putting into law, guys. Just because they're finally putting them into law doesn't mean they haven't actually been done. Children don't need deep listening, reflection, and personal communication. If they're not going to school and they are like this at going to school, they don't need deep listening and personal communication. They don't need a listening ear. They don't need a circle process where a teacher teaches social emotional skills such as empathy, compassion, and cultural awareness. Let's just be clear here that restorative justice is part of implicit bias. It is part of cultural awareness. It is part of critical race theory, because restorative is another word for transformative, which goes under social emotional learning. Okay. Restorative justice process is a collaborative process that seeks to involve and engage people in decisions that affect their lives. Notice they say people in decisions. They don't ever say parents. Nowhere in here does it bring the parents into it. So because I'm showing you Fairfax, again, I challenge you to search your division and restorative justice. Okay. Restorative practices or restorative circles. And they say it's always voluntary. Okay. When has anything that a child has done in school without their parents knowing been voluntary? They're children. You're not consulting their parents. It is a victim-centered process for responding to harm and wrongdoing. So what they're essentially doing in restorative justice. Now, this would be if this happened with multiple assaults across the state and with our children, is they're sitting a victim and a victimizer. So your child had her skirt pulled up or was inappropriately touched in school. Is that now they're going to sit your child across the table from the victimizer and they're going to talk it out. That's restorative practices, restorative justice. And let's see, what else did I want to bring up? And not only that, but when the Hill reports, this would be recently, the predictable failure of restorative, when the Hill of all places reports, and you can look this article up, the predictable failure of restorative justice in schools. Okay. When the Hill writes that, It's extremely the hill of all places. But this has been going on for so long that it's mind-blowing that they're now finally writing it into bill. Problem, solution, problem. Last year they did trauma-informed care. Already been done. Trauma-informed care, okay, just so you know, is part of the CRT triangle, is that trauma must have existed, which you are acknowledging, and that was bipartisan, unanimous. Bravo, Swamp General Assembly. Is that trauma must be acknowledged. So you are acknowledging that trauma, okay, you spirit murdered my black joy. Okay, critical race theory, oppressor oppressed. Trauma must have been, and so therefore trauma-informed care is needed because they've all been traumatized by us spirit murdering their black joy. What? Yes, that is what trauma-informed care. So you're going to teach trauma-informed care to all children, despite whether they've been traumatized or not, traumatizing those who haven't been traumatized. Okay? It's like the problem of social emotional learning. Same exact thing. Mental health care to all children is that you're going to continue to have suicidal children committing suicide because you're giving it to all children, including those who don't need it. So you're going to be traumatizing those who don't need it. You're going to be missing the children who do need it. And so as this suicide rate and the mental health rises, the problem, solution, problem. You're missing the ones who actually need it by giving it to those who don't. So you're creating more mentally unhealthy children by talking to those who don't have a prefrontal cortex or the ability to reason, because these people do not have an understanding of what age appropriate is. Okay. Age appropriate is if a child has a prefrontal cortex, which is reasoning, that maybe you can then, with parental consent, teach them about why it's bad to commit suicide or what anxiety is. But you cannot continue to teach children without a prefrontal cortex who have no ability to reason, without parental knowledge, what suicide is, about what generalized anxiety is, about mental health, you're mentally ill, and then you have children coming home talking about how they're mentally ill because they have no reasoning ability, and parents don't have any clue what's going on. That's my soapbox, because people, you wake up, whether they are mentally ill or not. Has anybody ever asked the question, can you show me that? Or are we just buying into the fact that we heard somewhere, or they're acting a little bit different, or there's a problem, or the news is telling us that they are? Has anybody ever said, show me the receipts? I need to see this. Or are we just saying, yep, okay, I heard a story about my friend's kid who was mentally ill, so yeah, they must be all mean. No. And then on top of that, what does that mean? What is your definition of mentally ill? Because according to Medicaid, it's unhappiness. Because they're using the DSMV. So again, it should have been obvious that teachers, like all rational human beings, prefer order to chaos, safety to danger, and purpose to futility. Take away a school's ability to use the traditional disciplinary methods that actually work to facilitate order and safety, and many teachers will inevitably move on to less challenging, more fulfilling jobs. Again, teachers want order. Teachers complaining that children are being bad and then blaming it on parents. No. It could be this percent, but when all schools are doing this and all kids are pretty much acting crazy, you have to think to yourself, what's going on for all kids in Virginia to be acting crazy and acting like lunatics with like feral children? Did all parents just decide to go, nope, screw it? No, they're all sent to what? Compulsory education. So if all children are acting pretty much the same way, is it all parents got together and decided that we don't care, let our kids be feral? No, they're all required by law to go to one building where they are captive audiences. So to criminalize parents for children not going to school when they haven't been disciplined in 15 years, Todd Pillion, God, I wish I lived somewhere in D6. Oh my God. A Republican criminalizing parents is what I have to say. So yes, babysitting preteens and teens, and make no mistake, that is what school becomes when order is absent. This is from The Hill. Okay? The Hill. 9/11/23. The predictability failure of restorative justice in schools. It's not just predictable because Biden-Harris just gave more money, because the DOJ gave the money. Why is the DOJ, by the way, giving $63 million for school discipline? Bill Ayers, my God, in 2014. Okay. So because if you don't know what's going on in schools, then you're going to be like, I can't imagine any parent okay with, I don't care what side of the aisle you are on. This is a Republican criminalizing parents. What does that mean? That means CPS. That means your children are at risk of being taken from you because of what these schools have already done. And on that note, I'm going to bring up something. Let me see if I can. I'm going to bring up a couple things, actually. So I just went through my phone, which is really funny. If you imagine, I always say this, is that if anything happens to me, somebody get my phone, because screenshots. Let's see. Let's bring up something that's going to probably make people a little bit angry. That's all right. Needs to be done every once in a while. So, let's talk about this. As soon as it pulled up. So, there was a recent case in Fuck Your County where Caitlin Renee Grimley, now she was someone who raped a 13 or 14-year-old boy. Now, she entered a guilty plea that found her guilty of consensual sex with a child of 15. Okay, you can't have consensual sex with a child who's in your care as a custodian or guardian, which we'll confront that later. But she was sentenced to home confinement and will be required to complete restorative justice. So restorative justice is also like a criminal, so they're doing what they're doing to kids, they're doing in the courts. And so I just went in and, just because what I do is I pulled up, can I zoom in? Let's see. Right here. I went in because court records are public. So this woman not only does not have to register as a sex offender. By the way, her dad is the new principal at the Fuck Your High School, Rains. If you're familiar with that area, I believe a principal tragically was killed in a car accident. And so her daddy is now Principal Rains. That wouldn't have anything to do with it. But she doesn't have to register as a sex offender. And she can get her license back when her probation is over. But right here, sentencing order, restorative justice. Restorative justice. So just to kind of equate what's going on in the courts and schools, how that's going to work out. So someone who raped a 12 or 13-year-old boy as a teacher was given restorative justice and doesn't have to. And now they want to write restorative justice into law for children in schools, just to kind of give you how that's going to work out. But some other images. Everybody, well, pretty much most everybody, when we talk about DESA and the behavior screeners that they're giving our kids, this is just, I just went through my screenshots and typed in restorative justice, and these were just the ones that popped up. So it says here, broaden your SEL research vocabulary. Right down in here, restorative justice, equity, trauma-informed practices. Okay, this is school climate and culture. So when you have all these things, 21st century skills, yes, not a good term. Then this would be from the NEA. Just popped up, so I thought I'd share it. So in 2019, adopted there. If you didn't know, the NEA, that'd be the crazy pants, CEA, VEA, EA of your area. New business item 19 in 2019. NEA will promote Black Lives Matter Week of Action in schools during Black History Month. Yes, Chesterfield did that in 2021. Ending zero tolerance policies and replacing them with restorative justice practices. If you want to know what's coming up in legislation, follow what happens in the summer when the NEA has their annual COVID meeting. It's pretty much guaranteed. Mandating ethnic studies. I can't zoom in, which sucks, but this would be the Virginia, the VTSS, which is the Virginia Tiered Systematic, the MTS. Well, I'll show you in a second. But professional learning for school personnel. Right here, it's got restorative practices. And this, if you guys, this means this is old school VDOE right here, like James Lane. Train school staff and provide resources to implement local school divisions code of conduct using data to analyze and address challenges and successes with the MTSS. So when you hear MTSS and BTSS, social emotional learning, trauma informed practices. This was before the law was written, bipartisan, unanimous. Woo! Go Virginia General Assembly, swamp. Positive behavior, that's PBIS. Again, been pilot schools or like ACAMAC, and there's was probably 11 years ago. That's another solution problem. And then here we go, restorative practices. So again, all of these things, law, after the fact, after implemented. And this is from one of our Chesterfield crazy pants teacher group. Professional development, train teachers, and this popped up in my screenshots, train teachers in culturally responsible educational practices and implicit bias, just to clarify that the two go together. Let's see. Sorry. Oh, right here, whole child communities. This is very important when we talk about the new legislation that's coming in for, again, community schools. 30 years been going. They're finally writing law about it. That would be George Allen and Mark Warner did that. Okay, 30-year anniversary. Look up your division. Type in community schools, communities in schools, Virginia. And you will find your division and how many of your schools are, and it is essentially social emotional learning, restorative practices all day, every day. Trauma-informed cultural prevention, suicide prevention and awareness, restorative practices, all day, healing, inclusion, learning. So when we talk about whole child, okay, and again, another whole child response, okay, these are just different images that I, culturally affirming and sustaining practices. Is that it's all part of the same thing. And again, DESA, okay? So Chesterfield has PK through 8, and then 9th through 12th do self-reporting. This is behavior screeners, no matter what they want to call them, is that it is assessing academic success, mental health, school and climate and culture, restorative justice, equity. So just now with the implementation of Birth, Thrive to 5, it's called the DECA P2, or they even have an infant version, DECA. DECA IT would be the infants and toddler version. And so restorative classroom. So instead of suppressing misbehavior, is based on the view that misbehavior is evidence of failing students or classroom. It is recognizing and using the inherent value of misbehavior as an opportunity for social and emotional learning. Restorative circles that bring together everyone who is most immediately affected by the incidences. Instead of punishment and exclusion is used to control misbehavior and motivate positive behavior changes. The dialogue leading to understanding and action to set these things right and repair and restore relationships. Nothing about the behavior. Okay, and it doesn't restore the relationship. And this is from The Abolitionist's Guide to Social Emotional Learning. Protect the dignity of all students. We know that all doesn't mean all, except if you're talking about all as in homeschool, private school, but by funding supportive resources such as counselors, mentor, and wraparound services. Fund, implement, and prioritize transformative and restorative. They have to go together. When you hear restorative, it's transformative. Antonio Gramsci, I'm not going to get into that, but transformative education is like what we're doing, seeing the pinnacle of now, but it's been in play for 100 years. And restorative justice practices. Stop the arrest, school removal, and push out of Black students, other students of color, LGBTQI youth, homeless youth, foster youth, and students with disabilities. Fund public education, not publicly funded, private managed. So this is like their goals. Eliminate policies and practices that contribute to the surveillance, militarization, and criminalization of schools. You know what? I haven't heard one liberal talk about the surveillance of our children, which would be everything. I mean, even Elizabeth Warren talks about the surveillance of Black and LGBTQ children using threat assessment software, which Virginia was the first state to implement, just by the way, about 12 years ago. Focus on improving school climate. Your school climate is pretty much assessing. So when you get a climate survey notification, opt your child out. You don't want that data collected on them. It's how racist your school are, or how inclusive to the LGBTQ community they are. And fully implementing the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is Obama's version of No Child Left Behind because it didn't go away. And this is a screenshot of what I showed you earlier. 10 indicators of school-wide systemic social emotional learning. We're going to go to where is it? In here somewhere is here. So these are the 10 indicators. Support school and classroom climate, culturally responsive. And again, the reason I'm showing you all of this, including the fuck your teacher who got off with restorative justice after raping a 13-year-old boy, Caitlin Grimley, is so you can see exactly how all this goes together. So the point of this, again, was Todd Pillion's bill criminalizing parents for their children being, and again, that is SB 619. Todd Pillion being a Republican, criminalizing parents. And again, neglect is a term that needs to be fixed. Because neglect, the fact, when I knew about this bill for like a week now or more, but when I pulled up, it was a Republican bill, my brain went, because this isn't Elizabeth Guzman, okay? Chronically absent, meaning any student, okay? That would include under compulsory education, private and homeschool, which is important. Who has missed 10%, including excused absences. Educational neglect is what it's called. So for the purpose of, it's been an hour, and I'm hoping that somebody is like, what in the hell? Because as far as I can understand, when you backtrack this bill you go under history, if you guys don't know about the LIS system, you go down here. It looks like it was assigned to, that means I get to go see my best buddy Van Buckenberg when this goes up. It has been assigned and there's nothing else on it yet. So we need to stay on top of that. They meet, Senate Public Ed meets Thursdays around 12:30, 30 minutes after close of session, Thursdays around 12:30. Last time I was there, we didn't get in until 2. So that's just a guesstimation. If you'd like to come speak out against anything going on in public education, it's Thursdays around 12:30, 1 o'clock, new building, 3rd floor, Senate Room C, I believe. But please stay on top of these things. Go through. And again, you can just type into Google LIS Virginia and this will pop up. And let's see, you can go to here. Let's see, bills and regulations. Or you can just go to the home. Let's see, where is... Introduced. Submit. No, you gotta just, let's see. No, I don't want to do this. I want to go to LIS Home. Here we go. So if you go to LIS Home, lis.virginia.gov, you can go to bills and resolutions. You can search by the House, Senate, passed, failed, member, committee. So we can go to committee and we would go to Senate, education and health. Now subcommittee, you can see education has these. So we're going to go to public education. And you can pick a date. So this would have been last Thursday. And so these are all the bills, I'm guessing, that are left, that are still in. And you can backtrack here. And so that's how you figure out, or you can go to all legislation and go through all of the bonkerness. And it goes by House first. And health, like search warrants, menstrual health data prohibited. Like, for the love of my Lord, go through it. Like, I challenge. And if everybody, I will send you a free t-shirt. If everybody goes through this tonight and sends me parentteam6@gmail.com, the craziest 5 bills that you read, I will send every single person who does this a free t-shirt. A free t-shirt of what? I don't know, something pro-America, pro-parent. I will send you a Parent Team 6 or a, my favorite, it's driving me nuts. My Come and Get It 14 a minute shirt. But if everybody do it by tomorrow night, I will send you a free t-shirt just so that everybody gets involved. Go in lis.virginia.gov, bills and resolutions, and just read them all and find your 5, the craziest ones. And again, I don't care what, it doesn't have to be education, just the craziest 5 that these people literally have time to go read, just so that you can start to understand what's going on. And then write a note to Todd Pillion and thank him for cracking the door to criminalizing parents. Because whether he knows it or not, he's cracking a door that needs to be slammed in his face, and then he needs to be removed from the GOP along with Kerry Coyner. And that's what I'm going to close with. Because any Republican criminalizing parents, you belong in the same category as Crazy Pants Elizabeth Guzman.